The Silent Crusade. Author's note. The Silent Crusade that we have in the game was adapted by KMS, but the content originally came from JMS. The original JMS story is significantly different and even has its own blockbuster that expands the story. While I don't know too much about the details, the story focuses on the player working together with either Crow or Starling, depending on your gender. Male characters get Starling, while female characters get Crow, as your partner serves as both your rival and love interest. Personally, I wish we got more of the options to choose our partner, but I think that Nexon would sooner give out free frenzy totems than let us have a romance with a character of the same gender. Facts, though. I believe that Crow and Starling were also revealed to be siblings in the JMS lore, although they're only teammates in KMS. The other noticeable difference is that the main villain of the JMS Silent Crusade is the Black-Blooded Demon Brigade, which actually has no relation to the demons of Tynerum. This game is ironically very unimaginative with its names in spite of the creative stories that they tell. There's also some tie-ins with Hilla, although I don't know much about the details. In contrast, the main villain of the KMS Silent Crusade is Arcarium, who's created mystic gates across Maple World in order to go back in time to free the Black Mage. The placing of this storyline is a bit weird. During the Alliance prequest and the Resistance storylines, Orchid tells Glimmer that Arcarium has already made his move, which can only really refer to the Mystic Gates. The Silent Crusade is also said to be part of the Maple Alliance at the end of its storyline. But as the conversation between Orchid and Glimmer takes place before the Alliance is formed, this must mean that the Mystic Gates must have appeared before the Alliance existed. This implies that at least the first chapter has to take place before the Alliance is formed, while at least the last chapter has to take place after the formation of the Alliance. Additionally, the events of Chapter 3 of the Silent Crusade are said to take place before the Lion King Castle storyline, while Chapter 4 takes place soon after. Because the formation of the Alliance now occurs much later in the chronology, that's how you pronounce that word, it wouldn't make sense to place Chapter 4 so far into the future when these events are meant to be a loose sequel to the Lion King's castle. Because of this, I placed the first 3 chapters together and moved the last chapter and the Arcarium prequests to another section that's set closer to this one. But keep in mind that the Alliance reference is just an irreconcilable plot hole, although the Silent Crusade being part of the Alliance and the Cygnus Knights is still canon. Also, you'll see that I referred to the protagonist of the storyline as a traveler, for the first part of the section before they joined the Silent Crusade. I originally called them an adventurer, but since that's too similar to explorers, this was the best way that you could refer to a class-agnostic protagonist, and you will find that I use the same term frequently throughout this guide for non-class specific storylines. A traveler was contacted by Jake, a subway worker in Kerning City, who explained that a girl had followed several shady figures onto the subway. Worried about her safety, he asked them to check if she was okay, and sent them a ticket that would immediately teleport them to the subway. Author's note: this is one of the worst setups for a storyline. Why would he contact us instead of asking literally anyone else in the area? Better yet, why can't he just go himself? Since this quest starts at level 90, we'd be grinding in Nihal Desert right about now. Upon arriving, the traveler found a girl who explained that her leg had been injured. Just then, Blackwing henchmen appeared and began attacking the traveler, who dispatched them easily. Author's note: I think that at this point, Orchid is leading her support to Arcarium in order to revive the Black Mage while keeping her true goal of Lotus secret. The out-of-universe explanation is that the writers hadn't settled on Orchid and her motivations at this point, and so her working together with the commanders didn't really mesh well since future storylines implied that she basically quit. The girl then got up and thanked the traveler, who was confused about how she could stand in spite of her injury. She casually dismissed it and asked them to help her find her bag, which had been taken by a monster. At the empty platform outside, the traveler found a crimson rock, but found no bag upon defeating it. They told the girl that they couldn't find the bag, but she dismissed that too, and told them that she was impressed that they had been able to defeat the Crimson Rock. She then gave them a ticket and explained that it would allow them to meet her at the relic excavation site in Parion before disappearing. The traveler used the ticket and met the girl at the relic excavation site. She asked whether they had seen a strange gate in the area, to which the traveler replied that they had seen one in the prohibited area during their adventures. The girl told them that it was likely the reason why the monsters around the gate were behaving strangely, and led them inside, where they encountered Lord Skeleton. After the traveler defeated it, the girl asked if they were interested in protecting the peace in Maple World, and instructed them to find Bastille and Edelstein. There, Bastille welcomed the traveler and took them to a hidden room. He explained that he needed to test their strength, and so he had them fight his puppy, Coco, who had the power to project a monstrous shadow of itself to fight. Author's note: Bastille's idle dialogue in Edelstein actually says that the dog's name is Muffins. I assume that either this is a continuity error, or Muffins is the name of the dog, while Coco is the abomination that lives inside of it. After passing the test, Bastille explained that their organization was called the Silent Crusade, a special group whose purpose was to collect information from the shadows regarding the Black Mage's return. He gave the traveler a special ring that identified them as a Silent Crusader, and introduced the girl from the subway as Starling, explaining that she would help them get started on their missions until they became skilled enough to operate alone like the other members. Starling told the Crusader that their current operations revolved around investigating the mystic gates that had been popping up throughout the Maple World. For their first mission, the Crusader traveled to Ariant and met with Laura, who explained that a mystic gate had popped up in the Royal Cactus Desert. Author's note: Laura is an interesting agent because she's a wild hunter. Given that the Silent Crusade is affiliated with the Cygnus Knights, I wonder why somebody from the Resistance would involve themselves with it. It's also worth noting that the headquarters of the Silent Crusade are in Edelstein too. Laura explained that she had been keeping an eye on the Nihal Desert with her jaguar, Sun, when she came across the Mystic Gate. As the Crusader had prior experience with the Mystic Gates, she asked them to go inside and deal with whatever they found. Inside, they defeated Dio Gamek and witnessed a strange shadow when he was defeated. They returned to Laura and reported what they had found. Laura made a note of it and told them that Starling had called to give her their next mission. The traveler went to Lab Unit 102 inside the Xenomist headquarters in Megatia, where they discovered a new mystic gate that had popped up. Upon entering it, they defeated Rurumu, and returned to report back to Starling. Starling was interested in learning that the Rurumo inside the gate was much more aggressive than the regular Rurumo. She explained that there are many gates popping up in Megatia, and that the Silent Crusade was scrambling to get them under control. She mentioned that one of their agents was on the scene, and that he likely needed backup. She then asked them to rendezvous with him in Lab Unit 203 and finish clearing the rest of the Mystic Gates in Megatia. The Crusader traveled there and encountered Crow, who dismissed them as weak and told them not to get in his way. He then told them to go into the Mystic Gate and deal with the monster on their own, claiming that he wasn't a babysitter. He explained that the monsters in the Mystic Gate were similar to the ones in the Nihal Desert, citing Dio and Rurumo being stronger versions of their usual selves. The Crusader went into the gate and defeated Humung Specular. After returning, Crow refused to praise them, claiming that it was something that any Crusader could do. He then told them to meet him at Lab Area C-3 in the Alcadno headquarters. There, Crow told them to deal with the monster inside the gate just like before. The Crusaders successfully defeated Deet and Roy, and after returning, Crow told them to meet him in Lab Area B-1 after investigating the Iron Mutae and Mithril Mutae first. After hunting them down, the Crusader met up with Crow, who told them that he had found traces of the Blackwings on his way there, which led inside the Mystic Gate. Author's note. As I'd mentioned, this is a remnant from the original story point that the Blackwings and the commanders were united in reviving the Black Mage. After they entered the gate and defeated Chimera, Crow noticed that the energy inside the gate was chilling and wondered whether the Mystic Gates were empowering the monsters inside. They explored the area inside to uncover clues and discovered research notes. The Crusader reached out to grab them, but Crow immediately pulled them back just as the notes exploded. Crow realized that there was something lurking within the Mystic Gates and told them to first get stronger while he went over his findings, as the Crusader couldn't be of any more help at his current strength. Author's note. This is the start of Chapter 2. Sometime later, Starling reached out and explained that Crow had been impressed with their work in Megatia, which in turn had impressed Starling, as Crow was difficult to please. She told them that just like in Megatia, mystic gates were popping up in Leafre, and dark energy was seeping out of them. She instructed them to go to the Cranky Forest in Leafre and deal with the mystic gate there. Inside, they defeated Master Hoblin and returned to Starling, who told them that some monsters could even escape from the mystic gates, given enough time, and so she thanked them for their preemptively stopping Master Hoblin. She told them that she had sent her report back to headquarters and that they would contact her with their next mission. Sure enough, Bastille reached out and told the Crusader that he had an urgent matter to discuss with them. He recapped how the Mystic Gates were appearing across Leafre and asked them to join Starling in her investigation. In Leafre, Starling told them to go to Skynest and to deal with a new kind of harp monster inside the Mystic Gate. There the Crusader found Master Harp and returned back to Starling, who explained that the monsters around the area were becoming more violent because of the Mystic Gates. Starling then received news that Manon and Gryphy the Manon and Gryphy copies inside the Mystic Gates had gone berserk, and that they would soon break out if they weren't stopped. The Crusader rushed to the Mystic Gates and defeated them both before reporting the situation was under control. Soon after, Crow reached out and told them that the Kentauruses, who had held a grudge against the Halflings, were staging an uprising. He told them that since he had saved them back in Megatia, he expected them to repay the favor by stopping the Kentauruses. After putting down the uprising, the Crusader returned to Crow, who told them that another Mystic Gate had appeared. He also told them that the halflings in the village were strangely dazed and sleepy, with some even falling asleep on the road. He asked them to check on a halflinger named Ito in order to determine what was happening. Ito explained that ever since he had licked a Mystic Gate, he had begun to feel exhausted, as though something had sucked his energy right out of him. Author's note. For my own sanity, I'm not going to question why he decided to lick a strange gateway. He told them that he would be fine, and asked them to tell Crow that he needn't bring hot soup for him. Crow was unusually impressed by the Crusader's kindness, and told them that they had done a good thing, adding that he would call them again if needed. Meanwhile, Starling told them that the Mystic Gates appeared in Leafre had coincided with the new Kentaurus king, and that she was afraid that it was leading up to something major. She then asked them to enter the gate and defeat the Kentaurus king. Just as the Crusader defeated him, a white mare appeared from within the Kentaurus king and immediately vanished. The Crusader returning to Starling, who realized that the white mare was a servant of the Black Mage, which confirmed that the Mystic Gates had something to do with him. Author's note. The White Mares were originally portrayed as servants of the Black Mage, as you can encounter two of them talking about his imminent return after you defeat Chaos Horntail. Though they've now been retconned as servants of Lucid, we do see they betray her shortly after the events of Lachlan, when she goes against the Black Mage's orders, which confirms that they answer to the Black Mage and not her. From what had happened to the Halflingers, Starling concluded that the Mystic Gates controlled nearby monsters and drained the life out of anyone who got near them. She asked them to report to Bastille while she wrapped up her investigation. At the Silent Crusade headquarters, the Crusader gave their report to Bastille, who was troubled to learn that the Black Mage's servants were controlling the Mystic Gates, and wondered what the Black Mage's goal could be, believing that it had to be more than simply causing chaos. Just then, Crow arrived at headquarters and frantically reported that Arcarium had been sighted in the Temple of Time. The Crusader asked who Arcarium was, to which Bastille explained that Arcarium was one of the commanders of the Black Mage, who had disappeared after his master had been sealed. The Crusader asked whether Arcarium's return meant that the Black Mage had returned as well, but Bastille merely told them that he couldn't be sure, as the only thing he could be sure of was that Arcarium's return and the appearance of the Mystic Gates signified that evil forces were in motion. However, he rewarded the Crusader by promoting them to Silent Crusader Officer. Author's note: this is now the start of Chapter 3. Soon after, the Crusader received a strange letter decorated with the symbol of the Silent Crusade. Upon opening it, they read that it was a message from Starling, who ordered them to return to headquarters immediately. There, Starling explained that more Mystic Gates had been discovered and asked them to go speak with Sodane at the crossroads of time in Ludibrium. Sodane explained that the Mystic Gates had been releasing strange energy and asked them to check it out. Inside, they defeated Overtime and returned to Sodane, who was impressed by their skills. Just then, he received an encoded message from Crag, a legendary crusader in Elnath. Sodane explained that Craig never called for backup, meaning that it had to be something significant. Though he wished that he could accompany the Crusader, he still had work to finish in Ludibrium, and so he told the Crusader that they would need to go alone. The Crusader traveled to the forest of dead trees, where Craig was waiting for them. He explained that he had heard a lot about them from Crow, and asked them to check out a nearby Mystic Gate from which he had felt bad energies. Author's note: in Chapter 4, we learned that Craig had asked us to deal with the Mystic Gate because he was busy investigating the Lion King castle. Inside, the Crusader defeated the Lich and returned to Crag. He was impressed by their strength and asked them to go see Laura in the Virtuous Forest near Mulong. There, the Crusader helped Laura investigate the nearby Mystic Gate, where they defeated King Sage Cat. Laura then explained that the next Mystic Gate was in the isolated swamp, which was on the way to Herbtown. The Crusader defeated King Centipede inside the Mystic Gate and returned to Laura, who thanked them for their help and sent them to reinforce Sodane, who seemed to be having trouble in Ludibrium. Sodane told them there was a new Mystic Gate containing a version of the powerful monster Papulatus, who appeared deep inside the clock tower. After defeating Papulatus, the Crusader returned to Sodane, who thanked them for helping him with his work and explained that Bastille was looking for them at headquarters. Upon arriving, Bastille told the Crusader that he had been pleased by their work and promoted them to a Silent Crusade commander. Author's note: the rest of the storyline takes place in the future, and so it'll be wrapped up in a later section.